Just to make sure we're all on the same page, you know, Ascribe Coder was released on September 20th of 2013. We do have updates to Ascribe Coder in just about every release. Our next release is actually due this Friday, or is coming out this Friday, version 8.3, and there are some cool things in Ascribe Coder coming out in that release. I'm not going to be talking about those today. You'll be able to find information about those in the What's New, and next week I'll be using that new software, or not next week, during our next set of webinars. Ascribe Coder was released to be to support multiple browsers, so you can access Ascribe Coder in Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Safari on a Mac. And the reason that we did that, of course, is to make sure that our software is usable across multiple companies, people who use different browsers. All of Ascribe has actually been rewritten to be accessible in Chrome, Firefox, and Safari, except for, with the exception of Phrase Analyzer, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Ascribe Coder was created to merge the functionality of 4 pages, and that's review responses, single response coder interface, edit the codebook, and codebook editor preview, which is no longer. We removed that early last year. We developed Ascribe Coder through your feedback, the Ascribe community feedback. Our support team maintains a user wish list, so anytime you make a suggestion or ask for an enhancement, they keep those suggestions, and our development team uses them to feed the development of new software. Also, our users group, which meets the second Wednesday of every month, had a big part in developing, or the development of Ascribe Coder. They give continuous feedback, and we welcome anyone to join that users group. If you're interested, just let us know. And then also the feedback that you give in your quarterly meetings and training sessions is all documented and filtered to the development team as well. So really, what I want everybody to know is that Ascribe Coder is the modernized, enhanced, multi-browser compatible version of review responses. Basically, it's the rewrite of review responses, taking it out of the Internet Explorer environment and making it accessible in other browsers. And what they decided was to combine 3 tools into that one window: the single response coder interface, review responses, and edit the codebook. And I know a lot of you already know this, you've heard this before, but we do have people attending these sessions that aren't yet using Ascribe Coder. And that's why I want to get to the next point, the reason we're having these sessions. Not only is it a refresher for some of you that use Ascribe Coder on a regular basis, but also it's kind of a push for those of you that aren't yet using Ascribe Coder, because the original version of review responses, single response coder interface, and edit the codebook are being removed from Ascribe. And they're being removed in version 8.4 release, which is tentatively scheduled for March 27th of 2015. That's the date we have on the board today, and it's the date we're all shooting for. So this is a push to get your teams using Ascribe Coder. So if you know someone who's not using Ascribe Coder, or if you outsource to someone who's not yet in Ascribe Coder, please have them attend these webinars or have them contact us to schedule training. A question that comes up often when we're going through these is, what about Phrase Analyzer? Will Phrase Analyzer be removed in version 8.4? It absolutely will not. Phrase Analyzer is under development right now, and it will stay as it is, accessible through Internet Explorer. Accessible through Internet Explorer until it is rewritten or incorporated into Ascribe Coder. So if you use Phrase Analyzer, you will still need to use Internet Explorer to access Ascribe. Again, that date that we have right now is March 27th of 2015. That's the slated date for the version 8.4 release, where we will remove review responses, single response coder interface, and edit the codebook. All right? We have a number of resources to help you get acclimated to Ascribe Coder, or just help your team get acclimated to Ascribe Coder. These webinars, we're going to continue these webinars. We're going to be doing them the last week of February and the last week of March as well. I'm conducting another set of webinars this Thursday. They're going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays. We are recording the webinars. So, and those recordings will be posted to the Ascribe YouTube page. If you go onto YouTube and search for Ascribe Coder, you'll see our recordings there. Also, we're very happy, our training team is very happy to schedule training sessions for you and your team on using Ascribe Coder productively. I've done a few of those sessions even in this year already to help people move everything into Ascribe Coder. The users group. The users group is a resource that a number of our clients take advantage of. Even if you just join and listen, even if you're just copied on the notes, it's a great place to learn how other people are using the software. Also, our help system. The help system is up to date and in-depth for all the Ascribe Coder tools. So the internal help system in Ascribe is another resource. And then we have some learning lessons. My training team has worked diligently to get these learning lessons out there for everybody to use, and those are actually on our Go Ascribe website. And of course, support, which is usually a lot of us, that's our first, our main contact with Ascribe is through support. And support will help, schedule trainings with you, make sure that you have access to these resources and everything else. So with that, let's go ahead and pop on over to Ascribe. Okay, and you know what? We had a little bit of an issue last time with the PowerPoint popping up. So let me go ahead and close that. There we go. All right, so I'm in Ascribe, and I am using Chrome today to access the Ascribe. And that's mainly what I do use to access Ascribe unless I need to use Phrase Analyzer. And I'm going to just go directly to Ascribe Coder. Since I was in this question earlier today, I can get right into it. And I'm going to pop into my Q8 on my webinar study. And I'm going to start out just with an overview of the Ascribe Coder page, just the layout. And then we'll talk a little bit about the responses side. And we'll spend most of our time in the responses pane today. And then talk just a tiny bit about the codebook side. Again, this is just a basic overview. If you've been using Ascribe Coder from the beginning, some of this might be a little redundant for you. But again, maybe if you have any questions or specific questions or need training, more advanced training, you can just contact us and we'll set that up for you. All right. So this is Ascribe Coder. The first thing that I always tell people about Ascribe Coder is the navigation icon. The navigation icon is in the top left-hand side of the screen. And when you click on that navigation icon, you'll get our main menu. The first part of it will take us back to the questions page. And then, of course, we've got our privileged navigation tools that we're used to with our right-click menus. And then we have our Ascribe tools, like the software packages that we can navigate to. Okay? So if I pop out the questions, it'll take me back to the questions page. And then, of course, I can right-click on a question and access Ascribe Coder there. All right. This is laid out very much like Review Responses with our code book on the right side of the screen. Okay, so our codes are over here with the nets in bold and the codes that we can apply kind of tucked in beneath the nets. And then on the left side of the screen, this is the response pane. Okay, so codebook, codebook tools, response pane, response tools. At the bottom of the screen, we have our question pane, and we can access our question pane by clicking on the little button there where it says one question, and we can close it if we're not interested in having it displayed. And we can use the resizer bar to resize the screen. Okay? One of the cool things about Ascribe Coder is that when you make these changes, if you resize it, and most of us do not want to resize it where we've got the big bar over here at the top, the big toolbar, we'd prefer it more like this. But when we resize it, it remembers. The next time we log in, it's sticky. So if I were to pull this all the way over here, next time I sign in, it would be all the way over to the right. Okay? So each user gets to kind of customize the screen to work the way they want it to work, or to look the way they want it to look, I should say. All right. So codebook, responses, question information. And the question information at the bottom, of course, you've got your study ID as well, and you can actually edit your question properties right here if you need to without going back to the questions page. So now let's talk a little bit about the response side of the page and the tools that we have on the response side of the page. What we see here, the first tool, probably one of the most important tools, how do I return responses? Well, you click the little search icon. And you'll notice that when you hover over the search icon, it tells us that Control-S is actually a shortcut for opening the search dialog box. So I click on the search icon, and I get my search responses dialog box. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about searching. We're not going to go into in-depth in searching again, just kind of some of the basics. But the first thing is, we have our little text box that we can fill. So if I want to search for uncoded responses that have the word price in it, I search uncoded responses, type in price, and now I'm seeing all of my uncoded responses that have price. Okay? So there are 11 of them, or 3.2%. All right? I need a drink. All right. So since I only searched for the uncoded responses, of course, maybe what I want to do is say, I want to see those that have price that are coded or uncoded. So I would do show only and leave this box blank. So when the show only box is blank, I'm looking for both my coded and uncoded responses. Okay, that's important to remember. So I hit go. We'll see. So I do have a few coded. So now I've got 21 responses that came up, or 6% of my responses. All right. So this is the search text box. This is the show only box that allows us to say, I want to show my coded and uncoded, I want to show my uncoded, or I just want to see those that have a code applied. So now I'm seeing just the 10 responses that have the word price in them that have been coded. Okay? So our options, coded or uncoded, when the box is blank, uncoded, coded. So those are the three probably most important things to remember about searching. All right? I'm going to go ahead and return, let me just go ahead and return all of my responses here. We'll get back to price in a minute. So a little bit about what you see when you bring up your responses. We talked about search. Now I want to talk about my response settings. Okay, there are settings on the response side. And I'm going to bring that up and change a few of these settings so that I'm going to customize the screen to work the way I like it to work when I code, and maybe you'll like some of those things too. First of all, when you first navigate into Ascribe Coder, the respondent ID is displayed, and it is displayed in red. All right? If you're not interested in seeing the respondent ID, you can toggle that off. You can toggle it on, toggle it off. The same with the question ID. You can turn the question ID on or off. So you have the options. And I like to point out that it's kind of cool that you can have your settings up here and kind of see what the effect is. If you've got any responses showing, it'll show you the effect immediately. So you can tell if that's what you want. Okay? Now some of us like our respondent ID showing, but we want it on the same line as the verbatim. We want to fill as many verbatims on the screen as we possibly can. So what we would undo, or what we do, is toggle off the place text on new line. So now we're seeing our verbatims listed with the respondent ID, the verbatim icon, then the verbatim. So the verbatim icon, that's there if we need to mark our verbatim as quality check, that's there. Most of us, though, don't use a verbatim quality check. So what we do is hide that verbatim icon. Okay, so now I've turned off place text on new line. I've toggled on my hide icon. I've got my respondent ID showing, but I'm going to go ahead and toggle off my respondent ID as well. Okay, and one other adjustment that I usually like here is alternate row colors. So again, right now I'm just customizing this so that I can read the verbatim, so that it makes sense to me. Okay? So those are my response settings, my response display settings. Another setting that's pretty popular to turn on is this notes field. And we'll talk a little more about the notes field, being able to edit the notes field. Some of you may be familiar with the idea that, if there's something that hasn't been covered in the verbatim, You might take a note on that piece, on the piece that you don't have a code for. Okay, so that's what the notes box is for. You can toggle that on or off. I'm going to continue forward with it off so it doesn't clutter my screen over here. All right, so yes, I've talked about the responses, and you can play around and figure out what works best for you over here. And then I'm going to skip over to my Applied Codes tab. So I'm going to talk a little bit about coding. So you can see here that this response here has 3 codes applied to it. Not control eliminate static, not control eliminate winner static, all other appearance to hair mentions. Okay? So those codes have already been applied previously. And actually, before I move forward, I want to talk about one more thing. Drag response to copy coding. I usually toggle that off too. With that on, if I drag a response from one to the other, it's going to copy all of those codes that were applied to that one response to the one that I dropped it on. Okay? Don't use that. I don't use that too often, and I'd rather be able to select a piece of the verbatim, to add to the code book or whatnot than the drag and drop. So that's another one that I turn off. I'm moving over here to Applied Codes now to talk a little bit about what we see in the codes that are applied. So right now, we could actually put a line above the codes that are applied if we like, if we need that distinction. We could actually turn on the Remove Code button, and I like the Remove Code button. I like having the little trash can to remove codes. What that allows us to do without the Remove Code button, I can remove a code by right-clicking and remove this code and hit Remove Codes. Okay? With the Remove Code button, I just click the box and then hit Remove Codes. But there's another option here, prompt for confirmation when removing codes, a single code. So now I can just click the trash can and away the code goes. Okay? So here what I've done so far is toggle off the prompt confirmation for removing code when removing a single code and toggled on the Remove Code button. Now you may also want to show your output IDs in your applied codes. That's totally up to you. You can show your output IDs and all these other things, input ID, username, date, coding method. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get over to the appearance. Okay? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the appearance now. When you first navigate into Ascribe, this code tooltips and logo is turned on. The logo is this bar at the bottom of the screen. Some of us turn that off so we have a little more screen real estate. It's totally up to you, again, whether you do that or not. And the code tooltips. So when you hover over a code that it was applied, the code tooltips gives you all of the information that you do not have toggled on your Applied Codes tab. Okay? So when I'm hovering over not control eliminate winner static, that's code 528 is the output, right? So it's also telling me that Ascribe support applied that code on 1/27/2015 at 2:17 p.m. and that was manual coding. Okay? If you're not interested in seeing that, and sometimes it does, it just seems to get in the way as we're moving around, in the Appearance tab you would turn off the code tooltips. All right. A couple of other things on the Appearance tab that you might be interested in. By default, our verbatim is in bold, and the font is Calibri, because that's the most legible font on a monitor. Okay? The size is 12. You have the option to change that. You can make it as large or as small as you want. Maybe you are one of those people that can see really small stuff and you like things to be, compact. So you can change that. I'm going to change it back to the default, which is 12. You can do the same for your applied codes. So if you want your applied codes in a different font, you can put your applied codes in a different font and size. But again, I'm going to change mine back to Calibri. And you can see that you've got the same options for translation, transcriptions, notes, related responses, and everything else. Okay? So that's our Appearance tab. A little more about the Appearance tab. These tools that I'm going to be talking about up here at the top, you can actually control which tools you're showing up there. So for instance, if you don't want to see your print or your filters or your sources or your word list, you can turn those off. And the same with your search settings. I advise people that if you want to keep this kind of clean, you want to keep a clean screen, I advise people to still leave your counts up here, just because it lets you know how many responses you have selected or how many codes you have, and I should say not or, and how many codes you have selected at any time with just a little bit of a glance. Okay? I'm going to remove these because I know those don't go there. There we go. All right. So talking a little bit more about the tools in our toolbar, I'm going to bring these guys back for now, and we'll talk a little more about that later. And actually, before I talk more about the tools in the toolbar, let me talk about coding. I skipped right over coding and went straight for the customization. So let's talk a little bit about how we apply codes here. We've got the screen set up. Looks good to me, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search for price, cost, and expense, and hit go. And it's going to bring up, and since I'm searching for coded and uncoded, it's bringing up all 22 responses that meet that search. Okay, so I can code by selecting responses. So I've selected, in this case, I've selected 4 responses. You see it says 4 up here. And then clicking on the code that I'd like to apply. So I'm going to apply expensive price to those 4 responses. So those 4 responses were just coded with expensive price. Okay? Now, this response here, I noticed, says the name of product and price. And there's not a code applied for name of product. So I'm going to give it all other mentions. I can drag and drop all other mentions to this response, and that code, all other mentions, code 527, was applied to the name of product and price. Notice that it did not apply to the other 4 responses I had selected. The selected responses will only get the codes that I click on. So if I wanted to apply not control eliminate static to those 4 responses, I don't, but I'm going to do it. Boom, it applied not eliminate static to those 4 responses. Okay? But if I decide again, you know, here I want to drag a code to this, you know, not, what's it say? It might make your hair dirty looking. You know, maybe what I want to do is give that another residue or something like that, and my price code. Okay, so what I'm trying to show or show you here is that the drag and drop is a one-at-a-time coding tool. So even if I'm dragging a code from one response to another, it's a one-at-a-time thing. It does not apply to the other things that are selected. All right? The responses that are selected can only get codes that you actually click on. So it's important to pay attention to what you have selected and what you're clicking on in your code book. So I try to keep that at 0 unless I'm actually coding. Okay? I can actually delete these 4 codes. I know we've been doing a little bit deleting, but if I want to delete all 4, I can select them and hit remove this code and all selected codes, and those 4 codes are now removed. So we've talked about coding by selecting responses and clicking on the code. We've talked about drag and drop, and again, the drag and drop, you can drag and drop from the code book or from one response to the other. Okay, so drag and drop this way or drag and drop this way. All right, and drag and drop is just a one-at-a-time thing, so you can have a number of responses selected and still drag and drop if you need to. All right, and now I want to talk a little bit about code duplicates. Okay, so for that, I'm going to actually search for nothing. All right, and maybe this time I'll just show my uncoded. Okay, so I've got quite a few responses that say nothing. And I could, you know, I could apply one at a time, either by dragging and dropping, or I could select multiples and then click on the nothing code, right? But we have another option for duplicates. We can also turn on this code duplicates option. So code duplicates all, that's what I'm going to do. And now, when I code a nothing, N-O-T-H-I-N-G, it coded 39 that were exact text matches, okay? Notice it didn't code nothing with a dot because that's not, or nothing with a period because that wasn't, I didn't code nothing with a period. I'll code nothing with a period, and last coded was 4. So that's the code duplicates option, and the code duplicates option works really well for small one-word and two-word answer type responses. Okay, so now I'm going to do another search, and this time I'm going to search for all my uncoded responses. Probably the most popular search, return all of my uncoded responses. So I've got 242 or 69.5 responses, or 69.5% of my responses left to code. Now, something else I should show real quick over here on the codebook side. On my codebook side, I do usually go in and turn on the settings. I turn on my counts. Because when I turn on my counts, I've got a constant count at the top that tells me how many have been coded out of the number available for coding. So I've coded 106 responses out of 348, or 30.5%. Another thing that is popular to turn on your codebook is your output ID. Some people really like to see the output ID. Again, that's up to you. I'm going to just turn those two on right now for my codebook. And this is basically how I would go about coding. These are the settings that I usually have for coding. Minus one thing, and that's sorting. A lot of times I will sort because I like to do the easy stuff first by verbatim length and then alpha by verbatim. So I do that. I click on my filter icon and then click on the sorting tab. And you'll notice that there's quite a few. There's a plethora of sorts here that you can pick from. This is probably one of the more popular. Another one that's really good that people kind of forget about sometimes is the number of codes applied, which is really helpful if you're looking, if you've got a single mention and you're looking for those responses that might have more than one code applied. But anyway, that's a little bit off topic. So I've changed my sort. Once I change my sort, I'm going to hit search again. Search again basically repeats the last search I did. So my last search was, return all uncoded responses. So now I've got all my uncoded responses in order by length and then alpha order so I can see them together. And I did this to show you another way that we can code, and that's by using the regular expression hyperlink. Notice that my n/a is underlined, and when I hover over it, it's suggesting my nothing code. That's because I've got in my code properties for my nothing code, I've got a regular expression that looks for n/a. Okay? So I click on that, and since I have my code dupes on, it actually just coded 6 n/a responses with nothing. As I scroll down here, this one says no dislikes. It's suggesting my nothing code. I click on it. It applies the nothing code. Don't know is suggesting don't know. Okay? So you can use these suggestions, these hyperlinks, to apply codes. Again, they're just suggestions. They don't always get it exactly right, but they're based on expressions that you've programmed in to your code book. All right, so that's regular expression coding or hyperlink coding based on your regular expressions. All right, so where are we on time? Cool, we've got 15 minutes, and let's move into, we're going to talk a little bit about swapping, and we're going to get into the code book a little bit. So if I want to swap a code, for instance, if someone tells me, you know what, Laura, really anybody that said NA should be coded in don't know instead of nothing, okay? The same with your no answers. They should be coded in don't know instead of nothing. So let me just, because I want to make sure that I got a couple of these here. All right. So what I can do is I can select, and since this is, I can select all of these, right, the codes that I want to replace, and I can actually pull the code I'd like to replace them with over to one of the selected codes and drop it, and it's going to ask me, do I want to swap? And I swap the codes. So now my NAs and my no answers have the don't know code. Okay? So swapping, and you can do that even if these guys were coded differently. Let's say that no answer had other mentions. Hold on a second. I've got 4 codes selected. Let me deselect those. Let's say that our no answer actually had other mentions. There we go. Okay. And somebody came and said, you know what, actually, Laura, don't know, and no answer, or NA and no answer should actually be coded to don't know after all. So I can swap these out, and it's going to swap all of them for don't know. All right. So that's how the swap works. Again, you can deselect each individual one, or you can click on it up here and it deselects them for you. All right. So a little bit now about the actual code book. And I think I saw a question pop up that said, can you show the date that a code was applied? And I'm not sure if I saw that or not, but just so you know, you can turn on the date. And it'll show up over here. And actually, you can show the username, the date, the coding method. It's up to you on the things that you show here. So there we go. I'll go ahead and turn that off. And now get over to the code book side of things. So as you're coding, you may find that you need to add codes to the code book. And first of all, the first thing to note is that the code book is locked to start out with. All right, that means that all we can do with our code book is we can change the properties of an individual code. We can change the color, change the description, the input, the output value, and the regular expression. I would not suggest changing the code ID. That's there for a reason. I would leave that be. But you can change all of these things, okay, with the code book locked. You can also add a code to the code book with the code book locked. So if I need to add a new code, I can right-click on a code and hit Insert Code. And this is Laura's new code. Make that one red and hit OK. So I can add a code with the code book locked. I can actually delete a code that's not been used when the code book is locked. If I try to delete a code that's been used, if I right-click, you'll notice I don't even get the option to delete it. Okay? So I can delete individual codes that haven't been used when the code book is locked. If I want to move codes around, let's say that I need to add a new net and I want to move codes around, I would insert a code below my miscellaneous net, and I'm going to actually call this a net, new net, and then I toggle my net option here. I'm going to make this one blue. Okay, so I've got a net down here. I can add individual codes into that net by inserting into. All right, so now there's one code reporting to my new net. If I need to move existing codes into this net, then I need to unlock my code book. When my code book is unlocked, I can move individual codes. So let's say that code that was way up here that I added before, oh, I deleted it, never mind. Let's say we want to add code 529 to my new net. I can just drag it down and nest it right in there under my new net. So I can do that. I can move individual codes one at a time. Or if there's a number of codes that need to be moved to that new net, I can select them, right-click on the new net, and say Move Selection Into. And it'll move those 3 codes to the top of that new net. Okay? So again, moving multiple codes at a time requires unlocking, actually moving any codes requires unlocking the code book. You can move one at a time with dragging and dropping. You can move multiples by selecting them, then right-clicking where you'd like to put them, and doing Move Selection. And in this case, since this is not a net, it gives us the option to move selection below. And there they go. Notice that as you select codes, it tells you, it keeps a count at the top that we have 2 selected. We click those to deselect them. The other thing that we can do here with the Codebook Unlocked is renumber our codebook. I know a lot of us are responsible for that. So I'm going to select all codes, and I'm going to choose Renumber. I'm going to renumber starting with, let's just start with 101 today. In increments of 1, hit Renumber. Boom, codebook renumbered. Now you may have noticed that I have this option to ignore certain code values. So if I were to change my don't know to 998 and my nothing to 999, like a lot of us do, then when I renumbered, I wouldn't have to change them back. Okay, which is just another time saver there. So now when I renumber, if I start at 201, I'm ignoring 998 and 999, so they stay there. All right. So those are some of the, I just wanted to make sure I touched a little bit on that with the codebook. Now I want to lock my codebook back up and talk just a little bit more about some of the codebook options that we have. One of the things that people often ask is, how do I return all the responses that have nothing, that have the nothing code applied to them? I right-click on nothing and hit Search Any. And it brings up all the responses, the 84 responses that have code 999 or nothing. Okay? If I want the responses that have nothing or don't know, then I hit Search Any, and it brings up the 94 responses that have nothing or don't know. And let me just go ahead and just play with this for a minute. I don't want to swap, Laura. You want to apply nothing here. Okay. And now let's find those responses that have both nothing and don't know. And it brings up the 6 responses that have nothing and don't know. And what I chose there was Search All. Okay. The other search option we have is Search Expression. And Search Expression will search for the responses that match the expression. So this is searching my uncoded responses that match my expression. And again, the expression is this little down here. We can talk more about expressions in a training session. We actually have, I believe, a video about that, or a YouTube video about expressions as well. So if you're interested in that, just let us know. All right. So now I wanted to make sure I covered those things. I missed those this morning, and then get back to some of the tools that we have in our response toolbar. So I talked before about being able to hide these tools, but while the tools are up here, the print option, we can actually print the responses that are on the page. So we can print the selected responses, the displayed responses, all responses for current questions, all responses for current studies, or responses for codes selected in the code book. So this really gives us the option to create a verbatim report, or if we want to show somebody how something was coded, if we want to show certain responses, we as coders can, because we're kind of the eyes and ears sometimes for the project managers and such, we can really create these reports and get them to the proper person so they can check them out. Now what you'll get when you print these responses is whatever you're showing on the screen. So if you add the study ID, the question ID, the respondent ID, you're going to get the study ID, question ID, and respondent ID in the print report. So if I do displayed responses now and hit OK, it's going to pop it right into Excel for me, and I've got a column for my study ID, a column for my question ID, respondent ID. This reviewed column shows up automatically, and it's the verbatim reviewed column. You can get rid of that. And then the verbatim. It would also have the codes if there were codes applied to this, but in this case there were no codes applied, so they did not show up. The thing I want to point out, though, is just make sure that whatever you want in your report, you've toggled that on to show on your screen. All right, so that's the print icon. We've already talked about the settings. We've talked about sorting, your filters. So all the filters that you have in review responses today are here, your quality reviewed filters. Whether translations, transcriptions, or notes exist, that filter. We also have the filter by coding method, the date that this stuff was loaded or when it was coded, and who coded it. Okay? The filter that we're used to, though, is this questions filter. And this is the one that allows us to filter through closed ends or through demographic questions or rating questions. And it works just the same as most of you are probably used to. All right. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to make sure I clicked on was the word list. The word list options allow you to say, you know what, I just want to see the words from my verbatims, my translations, transcriptions, notes, and whether you want to do all responses, coded responses, or uncoded responses. I want to see a word list for my uncoded responses. And perhaps I want to see those uncoded responses that have the word static in them. So my word list doubles to search my responses. So we're searching for the word static. Okay? The final thing about customizing this screen for you, oh, and I should say you've also got the option to print your code books. And when you print your code book, you can print them in various formats. Excel is probably the most popular, and it follows the same rules that we have over here. Whatever's showing on the screen gets exported. One more thing about customization, and I know I talked a little bit about this before. When you turn these guys off, say you want to keep this nice and simple, you can still access those without turning them back on by using your navigation icon and going over here to Tools. So you can still access print. Okay, even though you're not showing the icon, the tools are still available over here on the left side of the screen. All right. That is my overview of Ascribe Coder, the 30-minute overview, 45-minute overview. Are there any questions, Julie, that need to be addressed? Did anybody ask any other questions?
Yes, Laura. There is a question about code duplicates, and I just wanted to see if you wanted to comment on this. When using code duplicates, is there anything available to keep from any other code being applied to an already applied code? Well, already coded response, I guess.
Oh, so maybe you're filtering just for quality checking? Is that kind of what you think, Julie? To where you don't want any other codes to be applied, you're just filtering to look at it? Is that, I don't know that I understand.
Okay, let's look at the code duplicate options again.
Okay.
Bring this up.
Absolutely.
I think it has more to do with this.
Okay.
To answer the person's direct question, no, you can't restrict coding, okay? But right. I think I just want to make sure we talked again about the option all versus displayed responses. And
oh, okay.
You see what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that can help you.
Yeah. So, but the displayed responses really only matters. This has to do with sampling, right, Julie? You know what? Can I take this offline with this person so I don't confuse everybody else?
Yes.
I think we'll do that.
That's fine.
But basically, when you're filtering, okay, this is actually probably something I should say real quick. So when you're filtering, let's say that we're filtering for purchase intent people that were in the top 2 box. Okay, so I'm filtering purchase intent people who are in the top 2 box, and I'm going to bring up, I'll just bring up my uncoded. Okay, even if some of my nuns were coded, right, even though I'm not displaying them on the screen right now, if I were to code this, I've got my code duplicates all set, it would change the coding of my other nuns, okay? Or even if they didn't fit this filter, say that there are some responses, some nuns that don't fit the filter. If I've got this on all, even those nuns that do not meet this filter would be coded when I code the nuns. If I do it on displayed responses, just those that meet the filter just the displayed responses will be coded. So what I'm trying to say is I know there are more nones in here that fall into a different filter, right? And I can choose to just code the responses that are displayed rather than coding all of the nones. So that's and again, I know that's confusing. We can take that offline if anybody's confused about that and explain that a little better. I believe Julie explains it very well in the help system. Basically, the filter is not respected if you've got code duplicates all on. The filter is respected if you've got code duplicates displayed responses on. So it's kind of that simple. Okay? All right. So we are out of time. If there are any other questions, Julie, any other quick questions that I need to answer?
No.
Okay.
No.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your time today. We will publish this recording on the YouTube page, and we have more Ascribe webinars coming up 2 this evening and then 4 on Thursday. So thanks again. Everybody have a great day.